Mullen.
Tom Mullen, a self-made billionaire who built one of America's leading airlines through grit and genius, is throwing a lavish party in his New York penthouse to celebrate the company's success. On the surface, life couldn't be better. Tom has it all: wealth, power, and a loving family with his wife Kate and their young son Sean. But in less than 24 hours, that perfect life will be shattered by a single word no parent ever wants to hear: ransom. That same night, a reporter sneaks into the party, pressing Tom for answers about a messy lawsuit involving his ex-employee Jackie Brown. The confrontation is awkward and tense. It becomes clear that Tom's past is far from clean, and not everyone sees him as a hero. The next morning, Kate is serving as a judge at a prestigious science fair in the city plaza. Tom tags along, and Sean eagerly joins, hoping to compete with his homemade drone. But since Kate's on the jury, Sean's disqualified. Instead, he spends time flying a toy plane with his dad before wandering off on his own, disappointed and left out. Meanwhile, a group of kidnappers watches from the shadows. As Sean plays alone with his drone, he unknowingly drifts away from his parents. In a split second, he vanishes. At first, Tom isn't alarmed. Sean's drone is still flying, so he assumes his son is just nearby, but when the drone crashes and Sean is nowhere to be found, panic sets in. Tom and Kate first assume Sean ran off in frustration over the science fair. Then an email arrives, a chilling video showing Sean bound and terrified. The kidnappers demand a ransom of $2 million. Shockingly, one of them is revealed to be Sean's disgruntled former employee. Despite the warning to avoid involving law enforcement, Tom contacts the FBI. He has already gathered the cash, which barely makes a dent in his fortune. However, questions arise about why only $2 million was demanded, when everyone knows Tom is worth much more. Tom starts to suspect there's a deeper grudge involved, perhaps connected to Jackie Brown, the same man from the earlier lawsuit. Although Jackie is behind bars, Tom wonders if he might still be pulling strings from prison. Soon after, the FBI arrives undercover, disguised as cleaning staff to avoid alerting the kidnappers. Leading the operation is Detective Hawkins, a seasoned agent renowned for solving child abduction cases. He urges Tom to stay calm while setting up surveillance equipment. When Hawkins asks who might be responsible, Tom immediately names Jackie Brown.
Jackie Brown. The man was caught on tape.
Meanwhile, among the kidnappers, Cubby stands apart. Unlike the others, he shows Sean kindness, secretly slipping him chocolate and snacks to soothe the boy. However, his compassion draws a sharp reprimand from Maris, the gang's only woman. Puzzled, Cubby asks why being kind to a child is such a problem. That's when his brother Clark reveals that the plan from the start was to kill Sean once the ransom was paid. Cubby is horrified. Back in the city, Tom and Detective Hawkins visit Jackie Brown in prison. To pressure the FBI, Tom confesses he bribed officials to frame Jackie and send him to jail. Hawkins is shocked but remains silent, suggesting they confront Jackie directly. When they finally face him, Jackie erupts with anger. Though betrayed, he insists he is innocent of the crime. Meanwhile, Cubby ignores orders and leaves to buy more snacks for Sean. At the store, the police arrest a thief nearby, unrelated to Cubby. However, Cubby's nervous behavior catches the attention of Detective Jimmy Shaker, who is on the scene. Jimmy starts trailing him quietly. He quietly follows Cubby back to the hideout and slips inside. There, he finds Sean and draws his gun. For a brief moment, it seems like a rescue is on the way, but then it becomes clear, Jimmy isn't coming to save Sean. He's the mastermind behind the whole kidnapping, and Maris is actually his girlfriend. Back at the apartment, Tom sifts through old FBI case files on missing children, most ending in tragedy. Suddenly, the kidnappers call. The FBI springs into action, ready to trace the call and analyze the voice, but it's a dead end. Jimmy uses a scrambled signal and disguises his voice, completely outsmarting the FBI's tracking systems, which are being monitored by his bald partner, Miles. Tom tries to follow the FBI's lead and carefully asks about Sean's condition, but the kidnappers quickly catch on. Jimmy had expected FBI involvement but remains unfazed. As long as the ransom is paid, he holds all the power. Coldly, Jimmy gives an address and instructs Tom where to deliver the money. At first, the FBI plans to send Agent Paul to handle the ransom exchange, but at the last minute, Tom insists on going himself. Hawkins objects, worried about the risks, but ultimately relents. The team equips Tom with hidden bugs, a GPS tracker, and surveillance support from above. Meanwhile, Jimmy assigns Cubby to collect the money and warns him not to mess it up. Before leaving, Cubby quietly says goodbye to Sean, promising he will come back for him. Tom heads to the first location while the FBI tracks his every move. Then Jimmy calls, directing Tom to a fitness center. There, Tom is ordered to dive fully clothed into the swimming pool to retrieve a key from the bottom. This is no coincidence. Jimmy knows that once Tom hits the water, all tracking devices will be destroyed. With the key in hand, Tom opens a locker and finds a burner phone with new instructions. He changes clothes, transfers the ransom money into 2 backpacks, and slips out the back door. A brown sedan is waiting for him, and he drives off. Meanwhile, the FBI remains focused on the tracker planted in Tom's original car. By the time they realize what's happened, Tom is already long gone. Meanwhile, Jimmy and his crew follow Tom in several cars, keeping their distance and communicating via radio. Jimmy finally reveals his motive. He's been following Tom's public legal battle with Jackie Brown and discovered that Tom framed an innocent man to protect his business. Now, Jimmy sees this kidnapping as revenge for that betrayal. At the same time, Cubby arrives at an abandoned mine, the designated meeting spot. Before proceeding, he warns Clark that Sean must be released. If the boy isn't freed, Cubby threatens to take the money and disappear. On the road, Tom grows restless. Jimmy dodges questions about Sean and instead rants about the divide between the rich and poor. Tom's patience wears thin. As the signal weakens, Tom realizes time is running out. If he loses contact now, Sean's life could be in danger. Finally, Jimmy directs him to the mine. Tom follows the orders exactly, hoping it will lead him to his son. But when Cubby takes the backpacks and the money changes hands, Tom senses something is wrong. He asks where Sean is, but Cubby hesitates. His blank reaction confirms Tom's worst fear: something isn't right. Just when it looked like the plan might succeed, the FBI closed in. A helicopter spotted the location from above, and chaos erupted. Cubby panicked and tried to escape, but the area was already surrounded. In a desperate attempt, he opened fire and wounded one of the agents. The police had no choice but to return fire, and they took Cubby down. As Cubby lay dying, Tom rushed to him, desperately asking about his son's whereabouts. Cubby struggled to speak, but a gunshot to his throat silenced him forever. The operation was a total failure. Sean was still missing, and Tom was furious. He had warned Hawkins not to provoke the kidnappers, yet his worst fears seemed to be coming true. Kate was equally devastated. Both feared Sean might already be lost, but Hawkins clung to a small lead. The FBI had identified Cubby and discovered he had a brother, Clark, a known criminal. The situation worsened when the media caught wind of the story. Reporters swarmed Tom's home. Cubby's death made headlines, and Clark, overwhelmed with guilt and grief, couldn't stop crying. He had failed to protect his brother. Even worse, with Cubby dead and the police on high alert, Clark knew he was next. The gang's original plan had fallen apart. Clark wanted to end things by killing Sean, but Jimmy stopped him. Until the ransom was secured, Sean had to stay alive. That night, Sean got a close look at one of his captors and instantly recognized the face, someone he'd met before. The revelation shook Maris to her core. Her cover was blown, and if Sean escaped, she would be exposed. Meanwhile, Tom replayed everything in his mind. Cubby's confusion confirmed the kidnappers never intended to let Sean live. Suddenly, the phone rang. It was Jimmy, furious about the shootout. Before Jimmy could say much, Tom cut him off, shouting that his son must already be dead. To keep the deal alive, Jimmy reluctantly let Sean speak.
Holland.
Hearing his son's voice gave Tom a glimmer of hope. Jimmy then gave new instructions to meet at another location. This time, Tom acted quickly. The FBI created a distraction to mislead the media, but despite their efforts, a few reporters still managed to follow him. While waiting at a red light, Tom saw a news report about himself on a nearby screen. At that moment, Jimmy called. Instead of continuing with the original plan, Tom told Jimmy to turn on the TV. Using his influence, Tom appeared live on national television. This surprised everyone, not just the kidnappers but also Kate, who didn't understand why Tom had stopped the ransom drop. In front of the cameras, Tom laid all the ransom money on a table. But instead of using it to get his son back, he made a shocking offer. The money would go to anyone who could find the kidnappers, dead or alive. Jimmy did not expect this. Just days before, Tom was a desperate father. Now, he had turned the situation around with his own threat. $2 million in the 90s was a large sum. Many people would chase that reward, making Jimmy's group the most wanted criminals in the country. However, many people criticized Tom's choice. They thought he had made a risky mistake that could make things worse. Kate probably felt the same. At home, Tom defended his actions. He believed Sean would never be returned alive and thought fighting back was the only way. Meanwhile, tensions grew among the kidnappers. Clark and Maris, with no other options, prepared to bury Sean alive. But Jimmy arrived just in time to stop them. Later, Hawkins told Tom to take back his public threat, but Tom refused. He no longer trusted the system. The FBI had failed to find Sean, and Tom had lost patience. As a last effort, Hawkins told Kate about Tom's past, how he bribed officials and sent an innocent man to prison. Hawkins wanted to shake her trust, but Tom had already protected the money. Without Tom's approval, Kate could not access any of it. Soon after, their maid brought a message left earlier that day. It was from Jimmy, asking Kate to meet him at an old church. With no backup and desperate to save Sean, Kate went alone. When she arrived, Jimmy told her clearly that no money meant no mercy. To make his point clear, he showed her Sean's blood-stained shirt. Shaken, Kate started to doubt Tom's decisions. The next morning, she begged him to pay the ransom, but Tom did not agree. Instead, he went outside and doubled the reward. Now the bounty was $4 million, which shocked the media and made the kidnappers more panicked. Jimmy, losing control, called Tom again. He let Sean speak for a moment, then warned that if Tom still refused to pay, he would pull the trigger. Tom stayed firm. This pushed Jimmy to the edge. He fired a shot, or at least made it sound like he did. Kate broke down, convinced Sean was dead and blaming Tom. But in reality, Jimmy had not hurt Sean. The gang was not ready to cross that line. As their plan fell apart, they decided to run. But one problem remained: Sean had seen Maris's face. As long as Sean lived, he was a danger to them. Meanwhile, while Tom and Kate struggled to cope, Jimmy had other plans. As his crew prepared to flee, Jimmy called the police with a false tip about the kidnappers' location. Then, without warning, he opened fire on his own team and staged the scene to look like a shootout. When the officers arrived, Jimmy acted like the hero who stopped the criminals. Clark and Miles, realizing they had been betrayed, tried to escape. But Jimmy shot them down and planted a weapon in Miles's hand to make the story seem believable. Unbeknownst to Jimmy, Maris had witnessed everything. Shocked by his betrayal, she shot him in the back. Jimmy reacted quickly, turned around, and killed her instantly. With sirens closing in, he rushed to the room where Sean was locked up and staged a dramatic rescue just in time. Moments later, the police arrived and found Jimmy holding Sean. Jimmy claimed he had just saved the boy, and no one questioned his story. When Tom and Kate received the call, they rushed to the scene. Seeing Sean safe brought them to tears. Overwhelmed with relief, Tom thanked Jimmy sincerely, believing he owed his son's life to the man. Jimmy played his role perfectly. Not a single person suspected the truth. In the days that followed, the police reviewed the case, but since the suspects had been taken down by their own, no one looked deeper. Everyone believed Jimmy's version. The problem was that the praise and media attention turned him into a public figure. A few days later, Jimmy showed up unannounced at Tom's apartment to collect his reward, planning to use the money to disappear for good. Tom welcomed him without suspicion and even started writing a check for $4 million, casually talking with Jimmy about everything that had happened. But Sean overheard their conversation through the window. The moment he recognized Jimmy's voice, fear overwhelmed him. Tom noticed his son's terrified reaction and quickly realized what was going on. Keeping calm, Tom handed Jimmy the check as promised. However, Jimmy immediately sensed that his cover was blown. He knew the check would be useless and that Tom would alert the authorities as soon as he left. Cornered, Jimmy considered harming Tom's family, but Tom made him an offer. He promised to wire the money directly if Jimmy left his family alone. To make the deal convincing, Tom suggested they go to the bank together. Jimmy agreed but warned that there would be consequences if Tom betrayed him. On the way, Jimmy asked to use Tom's private jet to escape to Mexico. What he didn't know was that Tom's assistant, who took the call, was with Detective Hawkins. They suspected something was wrong. At the bank, several officers greeted Jimmy, still believing he was a local hero. Tom stayed calm and played along. He had already sent a message to the FBI and his job was to stall until backup arrived. Moments after they entered, a police radio alert announced that Jimmy was officially a suspect. This was Jimmy's chance to run, but he chose to stay and complete the transfer. As he stepped outside, 2 officers moved in to arrest him. Jimmy opened fire. In the chaos, Tom saw an opening and tackled him. The fight was fierce, but Jimmy managed to escape, badly wounded. Tom knew he couldn't let him get away because his family was still at risk. Tom caught up to Jimmy and finally brought him down. Though the man was beaten and helpless, Tom almost pulled the trigger himself. The police tried to stop him. But just as the situation was calming, Jimmy reached for a hidden gun in his sock. Before he could shoot, Hawkins acted quickly and fired. Jimmy was killed instantly. With that, the story ends. So the moral of the story is, if you're going to fake being a hero, maybe don't let the kidnapped kid hear your voice again. Also, never trust a man who brings snacks to a hostage situation.